Hello everyone, this is CJ with Cycletron. Well, today I'd like to talk about my Harley-Davidson Sportster S first ride impression. So the other day I headed over to my local Harley dealer to pick up a peg for my shift lever on my 2020 Roadster, and the salesman says, "Hey, we just got this new Sportster S in. It's the one here in vivid black. We weren't expecting it. We thought they were all sold out. Do you want to test ride it?" I'm like, "Sure." So this will be a little bit different video. I wasn't intending on doing a test ride of this bike, but I took advantage of it. So I captured some audio. Of course, I didn't have my GoPro with me, but I'll show some stock footage, and I'm more interested in sharing my impressions of this bike compared it to a lot of other sport bikes and cruisers that I've had over the years, and really drill down on who I think this bike would appeal to and what it means for Harley-Davidson as a company. So this is the second liquid-cooled offering from Harley-Davidson this year. The first was the Pan America. Like the Pan America, the Sportster S uses the Revolution Max 1250cc liquid-cooled engine. On the Sportster S, it's designated as a 1250T, so it's got a different tune than the Pan America. The Sportster S is rated at 94 foot-pounds of torque and 121 horsepower. So the horsepower is down relative to the Pan America, but this bike also weighs 57 pounds less than the Pan America. And I can tell you, this bike's a screamer. I was frankly shocked at how fast this bike is. To me, it seemed every bit as fast as the fastest bike I've ever owned, which is a Ducati X Diavel S. The 0 to 60 time on the Ducati's report is 2.7 seconds, which is quick. I mean, it'll straighten your arms out for sure. This bike seemed to be right in there. So I'm thinking this is a sub 3-second 0 to 60 bike. I haven't been able to find any specifications on that figure yet, but this bike is quick. But it certainly doesn't sound like your typical Harley-Davidson motorcycle, especially one with a Sportster name. So here's some audio of starting the bike, idling, and then accelerating. So let me know what you think. So again, doesn't sound like your typical Harley. I don't think the sound's objectionable. It certainly doesn't sound like an air-cooled V-twin motorcycle. That weird sound that you heard at startup, apparently it's a positioning of the cylinders before starting. So if the compression's too high, I guess the cylinders have to move to a certain position before it fires up. But wanted to give you that sample. So for many people, it's about time that Harley-Davidson released a street bike with more technology and high performance that can only really be found with a liquid-cooled engine and the higher compression that it brings. They've certainly done it here with this bike, but certainly other manufacturers have led the way, particularly Indian with their FTR bike with the liquid-cooled engine. Even their Indian Chief Dark Horse came out earlier this year with a 4-inch color TFT display with navigation that looks pretty much identical to the type of display that's on the Sportster S. Another interesting feature about the Sportster S is the variable valve timing on the engine. That's a pretty high-tech feature. They made room for this Sportster S by discontinuing FXDR. Of course, air-cooled Sportsters are no longer sold in Europe, so this new bike is a play on multiple fronts. So again, what were my overall impressions of this bike following my 20-minute test ride? Again, the acceleration is fantastic on this bike. The handling seems to be really good. Didn't care for the high exhaust pipes. It was kind of, the shield was touching my leg. It was just a weird point of contact. It didn't bother me otherwise. I didn't notice any heat or it wasn't painful. It just was an odd location for the exhaust, I thought. The looks are growing on me. I'm not really crazy about how it looks, but that's okay. I'd rather Harley produce some bikes that were kind of polarizing. Either you love it or you hate it. I'm okay with that. I like the tech on the bike. It has ride modes. You can program your own mode in terms of a track mode. I think it's a very solid bike. We'll be interested to see if Harley introduces other liquid-cooled bikes. You could almost bet on it. I'd expect a liquid-cooled engine for a touring bike to be not too far behind, particularly to match what Indian's done with their Challenger motorcycle. Um, so really, I like it. Yeah, the control position was good. They were more forward, but not crazy. I was a lot more comfortable on this bike than the Indian Chief Dark Horse that I had on the demo ride earlier this year that I mentioned in one of my other videos. You can get a set of mid controls for this bike. They also sell a fender eliminator kit, which I think would dress up the back end of this bike quite well. So who do I think this bike is going to appeal to? Certainly people who want a more performance-oriented motorcycle, but with cruiser or naked type looks. Those types of bikes have really gained in popularity over the last few years. The MSRP for this bike is $15,000, considerably more money than the old Sportsters, but if you compare it to, say, an X Diavel S, those bikes are around $24,000, or even a normal Diavel's $23,000. So my local dealer, as you might expect, if you watch my previous videos, they like to sell above MSRP when they can, and certainly if you get a Sportster S that has largely been sold out or reported to be sold out, and they're not going to get any others for the end of the year, you might be able to command a premium. I think out the door from my local dealer, this bike would be pushing 20 grand, which is a lot higher than a normal Sportster again, but cheaper than an X Diavel S. I think where a bike like this could suffer from the competition is if you compare it to a normal sport bike. I rode my Suzuki Katana, my 2020 Katana, over to the dealer to pick up that foot peg for my Roadster, and that bike has fantastic performance. Of course, it is a sport bike. The Sportster S is a sport bike as well, and I was out the door on that Katana for $11,000. So if you broaden your potential pool of candidate motorcycles to include metric sport bikes, they're going to beat Harley on price all day long. But again, it's a difference in terms of what you want, the aesthetics. So it's just an apples and oranges comparison. But in terms of pure performance for the buck, you're going to get more for a metric bike. I think the Indian FTR is going to sell for more than this bike as far as MSRP. I don't know if the Indian dealers are marking those up quite a bit as well. I'm hearing that's probably not happening as much, but it's taking quite a while for people to get bikes that they've ordered through their Indian dealers, as you might expect right now, through just the supply chain issues. So overall, again, I really like this bike. I like its performance. I'm glad Harley's doing some different things. Um, the exhaust note isn't too pleasing to me, but I mean, that's pretty common on liquid cooled bikes. Um, the looks are growing on me. I really don't like the high pipes. I'll be curious to see if somebody puts a different set of pipes on their Sportster S's that's a little more out of the way and maybe a little more aesthetically appealing in my view, but again, to each his own. So how do you think Harley's going to do with this bike? Think it'll sell well if they can get their production numbers up? Do you think that Harley's compromising their heritage by releasing bikes like this? Please let me know your thoughts. I'd be interested in hearing what you have to say. Thanks very much.